am I doing? Hello, everybody. How are you? Where's the evil twin? Hey, Dolores. Hi, Carmen. You got the Wi-Fi extender. Dr. Joe, did you set my invite to Shahed live stream a little while ago? Okay. I got your invite, but of course I didn't have time to go to it because I was getting ready for this. Unfortunately, Steve said, help, is there a doctor in the house? Carmen says, sorry, keyboard is really sticking for me tonight. Steve said, "Where's the evil twin?" Carmen says, Steve Wolfbrandt watching horror movies. Yes, indeed. Hi, Kay. How are you tonight? Okay, tonight we're going to have a hybrid show. I'm going to do my thing for only 45 minutes or so, and then we're going to get to a longer discussion than usual. We'll probably have a lot to go over because of what's happened to Trumpelstiltskin. So anyway, there's a lot to talk about with that. Steve says, hi, Firestormers. Okay, so I'm going to start with a post from Jacobin by Dave Sirota. Get myself a bit on track here. That's where I got the title of this from. It was from Trump Could Only Ignore the Reality of Coronavirus for So Long by David Sirota, former speechwriter for Bernie Sanders, former Bernie Sanders staff member, also going way back, and generally one of the more aggressive of the Bernie-crats on his team. He was right up there with Nina Turner and also Brianna Joy Gray in terms of their aggressiveness and combativeness, much more so than Bernie. Anyway, he says the lesson of Trump's coronavirus diagnosis is not that he deserved it. It is that you cannot ignore reality forever. The basic laws of science, of medicine, of the economy, of humanity always eventually express their will, whether we like it or not. The word hubris comes to mind here. This isn't in Dave's article, but anybody has hubris. It is Donald Trump. And what hubris is most often associated with is a great fall. And certainly his getting the coronavirus was that. Anyway, Dave continues, this, of course, is a truism for all of us who live ordinary lives out here in the actual real world. But it's a revelation for a Republican Party whose entire political identity is defined by scoffing at and mocking what GOP Karl Rove infamously called, quote, the reality-based community. That's the rest of us, except for the GOP. Hopefully, but probably not the rest of us. Many of us outside of the GOP. Indeed, for decades, Republican leaders have operated as if you are a fool to think reality even matters, because in their view, nothing matters and new realities can just be manufactured. What relativists they are. And meanwhile, they all go to church on Sunday to pretend they're not relativists. Trump is the avatar of that attitude. He spent the last 7 months trying to defy the basic axioms of biology. During the pandemic, he downplayed, the disease. He refused to wear a mask. He insisted on holding crowded campaign rallies where people weren't social distancing and where they were unmasked, and demanded the economy open back up as the virus spread. He ignored science, but ultimately science caught up with his reckless behavior. Well, I'm not sure it was science that caught up with his reckless behavior, but reality did. I think you were right the first time, David. And he became one of the millions who have been infected. David goes on to say, Trump is a guy who's been taught his entire life that he does not have to play by the rules and that gravity will never bring him down to earth. He made absurdly inadvisable bets on real estate and casino properties, and when those wagers inevitably went bad, I should say, he used bankruptcy laws and created a new legal precedent in court to shield himself from the financial consequences. Despite his business failures, he ultimately managed to rebrand himself as a genius worthy of his own business-themed but reality TV show. And since people thought he was a genius, he sold them on the idea of a university, and people paid him $150,000 to learn how to be a success at Trump's university. He cheerfully took the money and then kind of left them flat. There was really nothing they could use, and a lot of them were suing him. And, well, anyway, Trump is the guy who broke every established norm of politics. He's a stream of consciousness liar who makes ever more outrageous declarations that often ruin political candidacy. But his pathological lying ended up helping him defeat the Bush and Clinton dynasties and win the presidency. Trump is the guy who has run around denying climate science, even as hurricanes and floods and fire tornadoes have laid waste to the country. And he's seen those disasters and doubled down on policies boosting the fossil fuel development that's creating the emergency. Trump is the guy who refused to publish his tax returns while evading tax laws to the point where he was only paying $750 in taxes. That was 2 years running, by the way. And those were only 2 of 15 years. And in another 10 of those 15 years, he didn't pay any taxes at all. He got tax refunds based on tax losses that he paid. Anyway, throughout his life, Trump has learned the lesson that no matter how perilous the situation is, no matter how blatantly dishonest and ridiculous the self-image you are creating, if you keep doubling down on your own fantastical stories, you can keep getting ahead. Unfortunately, so much of our politics and media followed that formula that Trump perfected. Wild lies were told about Iraq. We went to war anyway. There was a white-collar crime spree in the political class that allowed a financial crisis to unfold, then just reinflated the same corrupt system as if nothing had happened. The climate crisis threatens the survival of the human species, and it is still rarely covered on TV news and never taken seriously by Washington policymakers, as when in the first of the debates, it got, 10 minutes and 5 seconds out of the total time. The problem, though, is that reality always eventually gets the last word. 1 million people died in the war. Millions of lives were ruined in the financial crisis, and millions more will be ruined by the climate disaster. As any casino owner like Trump should well understand, you can win a few games of chance against the House, but the odds always eventually kick in, and even now kicking in against Trump. He may have manufactured the notion he's a business guru, but his tax returns show a man deeply in debt. He may deny climate science and pretend everything is just going to get cooler, but communities destroyed by climate climate disasters have debunked those fictions, and now the climate crisis even imperils his own real estate properties. Hey, Mar-a-Lago. He may have paid almost nothing in taxes, but he's under audit and now may face a criminal investigation over allegations of tax fraud. He may have lied his way to the presidency. He may have bullshitted about how supposedly great the economy is and how well he has handled the pandemic. And he may have a right-wing media machine echoing all that nonsense. But polls show that out here in the real world, fewer and fewer voters are buying it. And yes, he may have insisted that the coronavirus is no big deal and tried to carry on as if nothing needed to change. But the virus inevitably caught up with him, just like it overtook the entire country as we refused to put in place the policies that scientific experts said were needed to stop its spread. Well, all that is true, but personally, I think we're lucky that it caught up with him before the election rather than after the election. In that sense, the virus is the polar opposite of Trump. As much as he personifies the belief that reality doesn't matter, A virus is the embodiment of the idea that reality will always have the last word, because a virus can't be spun or lied to or negotiated with or emotionally manipulated. It is a ruthless biological machine that abides by ironclad scientific laws that perhaps you can get away with defying for a while, but not over the long run. Obviously, we shouldn't celebrate Trump or anyone else getting sick. Okay, the disease is horrible and shouldn't be wished upon anyone. But we can learn from this important parable. If anything good comes out of all the disasters in this terrible year, maybe it is that our society will finally stop pretending we can ignore the reality. Maybe we can start rejecting the fantasies that have led us to this awful moment. Maybe we can create a new reality-based community before more unfolding cataclysms make things even worse. I certainly share that hope, of David's. I hope we can make the hope a reality, because reality matters. So going more into reality matters, okay. There were some remarks by Dave Dayen on this. He speculated that they appear to have contracted it from Hope Hicks, the Trumps that is, who was around the first couple as they traveled to Cleveland for Tuesday's debate and came to Minnesota for a campaign rally. That doesn't look like it is really true. It looks like it just happened that Hope Hicks got the first test, but it isn't clear who exactly this came from. It might have come from Trump himself. It might have come from the big celebration that he invited a whole raft of people to at the White House for Amy Coney Barrett. That might have happened. We don't know who first contracted it and who spread it to all the others, but we know that a lot of people who were at that particular meeting seem to have come down with COVID. We know, that another vector was that two senators who were at that celebration brought COVID back to the Senate, and since they were Republican senators, they were having luncheons with other Republican senators last week, and so another Republican senator let's see, Mike Lee of Utah and Tom Tillis of North Carolina were at the celebration, and I believe Tim Johnson is the other senator that they gave this to. It was reported today Chris Christie also has it, and his source for it could have been Trump, because he was drafted by Trump to come and help him to rehearse for the debate against Joe Biden on Tuesday. As they were rehearsing, there were, of course, no masks, because Trump felt it was safe. And so Chris Christie now is checked into the hospital, and he has many comorbidities. It's probably going to be a tough slog for him. It remains to be seen, though, of course. They may handle him without too much trouble. There's news about Trump, available tonight, and that news is that he did have serious symptoms at first. Apparently, he had been on oxygen. He's no longer on oxygen. They gave him the remdesivir, and they gave him an antibody cocktail, as well. He seems to be feeling better now, but they have to keep him around for some days to watch him because, of course, the antibodies are going to give him a greater capacity to fight against the coronavirus, but that means that he's going to experience inflammation because his system will go into overdrive trying to fight the virus off. And then there's the danger of the cytokine storm and whether he can survive the cytokine storm. I don't know if he's going to have the cytokine storm or, maybe remdesivir can counter it. Okay, maybe they gave him some other things which can possibly counter it. I don't know. But I think Trump still has a dangerous period to go through. He doesn't expect to be out of the woods for another 2-3 days. I think he had a speech somewhere tonight. I think from the president's quarters, at the hospital. And he had on a suit, I understand, okay, but not a tie. And he was looking pretty good for the time being, but he also said that he's going to be there, okay, a few more days. By the way, after Trump learned about Hope Hicks' positive test, he went out to a fundraiser in New Jersey and he gave a speech in front of dozens of people. So he endangered those people. He should have isolated after Hope Hicks' test. He did not. He went to raise money. People are wondering whether he's going to get sued by people that he gave that speech to. According to Dave Dayen, he's adopted just about every behavior you would adopt if you were deliberately attempting to become a super spreader. Yeah, we all saw that. Everybody saw that. Short of putting COVID smelling salts under his nose, said Dave. He did it with arrogance and an extreme lack of compassion for the dead and the dying. He laughed at everyone taking precautions. I'm not going to go into tone police on anyone who was laughing at him. And I thank Dave for that. I don't want to be tone policed. But a real world consequences, but a lot of real world consequences grow from this incident. One is that Trump's going to be very hard to contact trace. There's the West Wing personnel, the campaign staff, the family, the traveling press, the rally participants. Thousands of people are at risk. We don't know when he would have become contagious, or when Hicks was, or where. Trump spent Tuesday night in an indoor hall about 6 feet away from his 78-year-old opponent. Well, it looks like Joe Biden hasn't contracted it. I don't think he was 6 feet away from Trump also. I think it was more like 8 to 10 feet away. So maybe there was enough distance, but they were not masked for the debate, of course. And it was indoors. Anyway, Trump has had close contact with thousands of people, including Amy Coney Barrett, though she seems to be okay. She doesn't seem to have contracted it. It includes pretty much the entire top level of the executive branch and so on. Is everyone supposed to quarantine? Can the executive branch, this executive branch, work from home as well? Your office? Will we even know if this becomes a super spreader event? I don't know. Neither does Dave. Dave does not know this. Dave Dayen, this is now, not Dave Sirota. We like our Daves here. My uncle's name was Dave. Well, if Trump gets sick, perhaps very sick, he does have an indestructible, against all odds and practice of good nutrition quality. I think that's sarcasm. What exactly happens? Under the 25th Amendment, he could transfer power to Mike Pence until he recovers, and then he can take it back. If he's too incapacitated to serve or worse, that's a different matter. Then election law expert Rick Hazen points out there's no good protocol for replacing a nominee on the presidential ballot, especially not this close to an election. An already chaotic election would simply devolve if a replacement was chosen that couldn't get on the ballot and may or not be counted in write-in votes. Dave thinks that's a possibility that's remote, but what's clear is that Rump will have the best of medical care, the best doctors, the best living conditions. You won't have to worry about losing a paycheck while he's sick or managing the isolation of quarantine. In other words, none of the hardships facing millions of Americans who've been infected will befall him. Maybe there's one silver lining here. The one person in the world got the virus who could get through to the more intransigent of our citizens. The ones blowing off the pandemic is no big deal, calling masks the destruction of freedom. Trump is the only one who could tell them, quote, this is serious and you need to take it seriously, and have that be taken to heart. Now, this would involve Trump learning from experience and wanting to help others. So I'm not holding my breath, says Dave. But maybe this is a hinge point that gets this country more serious about the virus. Well, Dave, one can always hope. I'm not hoping too hard. I don't want to be disappointed. It's important to note, though, there's another column from Dave on the 2nd. Suddenly, everything has changed in Congress. There's a possibility we're going to have a delayed Supreme Court fight now, because with the 3 senators that were infected, the Republicans no longer have the votes for a quorum in Congress. And there may be more senators who become infected at this point. They were having luncheons this past week. So it's certainly possible that more than one of them was infected on the Republican side. Okay, now, Democrats don't have the same problem. The reason why they don't have the same problem is because the Democratic senators widely canceled their luncheons. They don't have any luncheons anymore, but the Republicans still have their caucus luncheons. Okay. So who knows who else is going to get sick. So if Mike Lee is quarantining at home, and if Tim Johnson is quarantining at home, and if Thom Tillis is quarantining at home, they can't be there to caucus. Also, Thom Tillis is running for re-election, and his opponent was ahead of him already. Cal Cunningham is favored in that race now. That was before Thom Tillis got sick. Thom Tillis is going to have to miss some campaigning days. He's going to have a tough time even if he gets well. So that's another problem for the Republicans. But of course, he probably won't be going to any quorums for a while. And Mike Lee won't be going to any quorums. And Tim Johnson won't be going to any quorums. So with those 3 not going to quorums, and Collins and Murkowski not there to vote for Amy Coney Barrett, the Republicans are way short of a quorum. They need 51 senators to have a quorum. If the Democrats stay out, they can prevent a quorum from advancing the nomination of Amy Coney Barrett. When this column of Dave's was written, only Mike Lee was quarantining at home. Thom Tillis had not yet gotten sick, or at least he had not yet actually reported an illness, and Tim Johnson hadn't either. And Dave says here, a couple more senators get sick and there's no majority for Barrett. Though, of course, Lee could recover in time for a vote at the end of the month. Yeah, but that might be touch and go. Could recover time, it might not recover, okay, at all. Uh, anyway, on the other outstanding issue, relief, there's been presumably, okay, an opening. Nancy Pelosi claimed this kind of changes the dynamic because here we see the reality of what we've been saying all along. This is a vicious virus. So we're in a situation here where there's a chance that they will come to the table. Trump has to miss campaign activities and fundraising activities. It puts him really behind. He needs something to happen to make things better for him. On the Democratic side, the Pelosi wants to make up for the fact that she botched the CARES Act in the first place. She wants to deliver a relief bill. Maybe Trump is now in a mood where he's going to want to say to McConnell, you get me those votes in the Senate, okay, or else I want a relief bill. As of yesterday, Pelosi and Mnuchin were meeting. They had a meeting for 65 minutes to hammer out the differences between the $2.2 trillion HEROES Act and the Republican offer of $1.6 trillion. That looks to me like it might be compromisable, with Nancy Pelosi still getting a bill that she can crow a bit about. We have to see if things work out, okay, in that way. But Trump is going to have to get on the phone to McConnell. I think there's no question about that, if something is going to happen. If things don't happen, then things are not going Trump's way. Very, very clearly not going Trump's way. People are making the point, particularly Naomi Klein, but some other people as well. They are making the point, as written by Naomi Klein in a tweet on Friday morning. She drew a striking analogy in an effort to place Trump's diagnosis in the broader context of his administration's failure to take the steps necessary to combat the pandemic, the failure that has resulted in more than 200,000 dead Americans and counting. And she said, quote, Trump getting COVID is the epidemiological equivalent of a mass shooting where the shooter opens fire on a crowd and then turns the gun on himself, she wrote. This is not a tragic accident, it's a crime scene. Yes, I think it is a crime scene. I think Trump should be impeached for this particular crime scene. You know, I felt that way for a long time. You know, I continue to feel that way while Trump keeps saying, it's a pretty good job we've done. And by the way, the latest figures on the particularly good job that he's done are they're approaching 215,000 now, getting very close to 215,000. Oh, screwed that up. So, $214,277 as of now. We had 755 deaths today thus far, which brought us up to 214,277. We're not really done with today yet. It's only 9:37. It's probably pretty much done, but not completely. We've got 646 deaths per million, We are they had a disaster in Ecuador today, 102 deaths, which is a lot for them. They've only got 17 million people there. So they've gone up to 65 deaths per million, and we're at 646. Earlier today, we were only 3 behind them. Now it's gone up to 9. They are 9 ahead of us in that particular horrendous race. So, but we're at 646 now, which is plenty. 23 deaths per million ahead of the UK. So that's the kind of job that Trump has done, closing in on 215,000. Pretty good chance we'll hit 215,000 tomorrow. Certainly, if not tomorrow, on Wednesday. Okay, so where are we now? So there's one thing to say about coronavirus relief, and that thing is that even though there now seems to be a chance that we'll get a relief bill, we also have to emphasize that not one House member on the Republican side could bear to vote for the $2.2 trillion HEROES Act 2.0 that was just passed in the House by Nancy Pelosi. Not a single Republican defected. $188 Republicans joined, 18 Democrats, and Justin Amash in voting no. Don't know who the 18 Democrats were. I have to check that out for you at some point. But I thought that was really emblematic of the idea that this Republican Party is just bankrupt. It is a total failure. They could not bring themselves in the middle of this pandemic with the economy about to collapse again. They can't kid themselves about this. I mean, people are getting evicted now. People have no visible means of support about state unemployment insurance. The economic indicators immediately have shown a grave downturn in income that people can use to pay their bills. The economy is clearly going to collapse this month, next month, and during December if there is no relief now. And yet, not one single Republican, 188 representatives would defect. And what about those 28 Democrats who defected on the Democratic side? It's just awful. It's awful even to think about. I mean, the people in that party just don't care about their constituents. I can't see how or why any of them could possibly be safe. Okay, let's get to democracy before it gets too late. ChooseDemocracy.us has an article called 10 Things You Need to Know to Stop a Coup. First, don't expect results on election night, and tell everybody you know that. Tell everybody you know that. So, encourage people in your community to prepare for some uncertain weeks. I think this piece was written by a guy by the name of Hunter, but I don't have the author's name on the link I've given. Maybe it'll show up as we go through it too. Do call it a coup. We can know it's a coup if the government stops counting votes, declares someone a winner who didn't get the most votes, or allows someone to stay in power who didn't win the election. 3, know that coups have been stopped by regular folks. And there's a link to coup attempts have happened all over the world, and over half have failed. And there's also a recent article that shows that 8 out of 12 fairly recent coups have failed. That's because coups are hard to orchestrate, because they have violation of norms. They require a quick seizure of multiple levels of institutions with a claim that they are the rightful heir. The role of the citizenry is crucial. That's because during the period right after a coup attempt, when the new government is claiming it is the real government, all the institutions have to decide who to listen to. I think I've gone through this article at least a little before. The important thing to keep in mind is everybody has to fail to cooperate. And that's item 4. Be ready to act quickly and not alone. Typically, power grabs are organized in secret and launched suddenly. Those campaigns that defeat coups do so in days. Soviet Union in 1991 took 3 days. France in 1961 took 4 days. And Bolivians in 1978 took 16 days. It is rare for any country leader to publicly admit they might not respect the results of an election. Of course, Trump notoriously has done that. There's some good news in that, because people who stop coups really have the chance to get training, warning, or preparation. In that way, we're ahead of the game. And I think there are some people across the country who are getting training to prepare for a possible coup after November 3rd. To start preparing, talk to at least 5 people who would go into the streets with you. The safest way to take to the streets is with people you know and trust. Talk to people you know in civil service in various roles about how they could non-comply with coup attempts. Use this time to get yourself ready to act. 5, focus on widely shared democratic values, not, on individuals. That is, don't focus on Trump. Go out and march for democracy. March for America. Don't essentially go out and attack Trump. March for democracy. Stay in the streets. Six, convince people not to freeze or just go along. It doesn't matter what the boss says, what the authorities say. Don't do what they want. Just refuse to obey the orders of the coup. In Mali, they called a nationwide strike. In Sudan, protesters shut down government-supported the radio stations and occupied um, uh, the runways at the airport. In Venezuela, all shops were closed. Coups are not a time to just watch and wait until someone else figures it out. No matter who you are, you can be part of choosing democracy. Commit to actions that represent rule of law, stability, and nonviolence. Stopping a coup is dependent on the size and mobilizations and winning over the center. It's a fight for legitimacy. Which voice is actually legitimate? Some people will have already made up their minds. The aim then is to convince those who are uncertain, which may be a more surprising number than you accept. But to swing to our side, that uncertain center has to be convinced that, quote, we, unquote, actually represents stability and, quote, the coup plotters, unquote, are representing hostility to the democratic norms of elections and voting. We prevent that possibility when we dehumanize potential defectors, make sweeping statements like, quote, but the police won't help, unquote, never encourage people to join our side and create chaotic scenes on the street. Historically, whichever side resorts to violence the most tends to lose. In a moment of uncertainty, people pick the side that promises maximum stability, respects democratic norms, and appears to be the safer bet. It's a contest of who can be the most legitimate. Mass resistance to coup wins by using walkouts and strikes, refusing orders, shutting down civil society. 8. Yes, a coup can happen in the United States. Can happen. We have reason to think that Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, groups of that type will join together to try to support a Trump coup. And we have reason to believe that's what we're going to have to oppose. So number 9, center in calm, not but fear. And we know fearful people are less likely to make good decisions. Let's aim for calm and avoid hyperbole. Be a reliable source by double-checking rumors and spreading high-quality facts. Sure, read social media, but spend some time, doing real things that ground you. Breathe deeply. Remember how you handle fear. Like repeat to yourself, the fear is the mind killer. Play out scenarios, but don't become captured by them. We're doing this to prepare just in case. And 10, prepare to deter a coup before the election. The best way to stop a coup is never to have one. People are doing lots of good work on issues of voting rights, urging turnout, stopping repression, uncovering fraud, and getting people to commit to democracy. That may be enough. One of the easiest things you can do is sign the pledge to choose democracy. So if you go to the link I gave at Choose Democracy, you can sign the pledge to choose democracy and get a lot of people across the political spectrum signing the pledge as well. Because the best way to stop a coup is to deter it. Okay. So you can choose democracy trainings at the bottom of the page that I'm reading from. There's a national workshop that is being advertised. There's training on October 6th. It's just a couple of days. So if you go to the link and click on it, then you can receive a Zoom link and get some training. More training sessions will be scheduled soon. and you can sign the Choose Democracy pledge by clicking on the link from this page, okay, as well. Okay. So, there are others who are planning to resist. There was an article in Common Dreams I linked to. The headline of it is #CountOnUs. Youth organizers have a plan to mobilize if Trump tries to steal the election. And you can read about the leaders of Dream Defenders, March for Our Lives, the Sunrise Movement, and United We Dream. They came together. They announced on Thursday that they have a new mobilization effort to protect the ballot box and lead a massive youth strike if Trump tries to steal the election. So you can read the article on that. It is certainly inspiring, and it certainly indicates we are not alone in this. I've linked to that also in the description. As polls shows, climate action is a winning issue. Green campaigners have mobilized for Democrats in key Senate and House races. This is an article by Julia Connelly that appeared in Common Dreams. And this is about the activities of various interest groups, voluntary associations, starting a campaign demanding bold action to address the climate emergency. And they're going to be supporting candidates that are running on the climate emergency and doing something about it, focusing on Maine, Arizona, South Carolina, Iowa. Operating off of polling data showing that there's lots of support for green stuff in these states. And this campaign, the Green Wave campaign, is sending 70 professional organizers into 15 states to oversee remote phone and text banking supporting the candidates. Organizers are also going to promote early and mail-in types of voting. So there's that also as another effort. And then finally, the Republicans have tried to pull a fast one in Pennsylvania. They have what they call an election integrity panel, which is being constituted actually by the legislature. And they're trying to vote on a resolution. Well, it was put forth on Monday, advanced on Wednesday, and it's to basically have the legislators supervise by the election. And the legislature, of course, is a Republican legislature, so supervision by them seems to mean they're going to try to rig that election. And they're being opposed by a number of Democrats in the state who are raising the alarm. The name of Malcolm Kenyatta is important here. He's a visible figure trying to oppose them on this. Governor Tom Wolf is also doing it. I don't know what's going to happen there, but if you can exert any influence in Pennsylvania to stop this from happening, this could be very important in safeguarding the election in Pennsylvania. So, choose democracy. That's what I say, and those are some things you can do in order to choose democracy. So, I said I would start our discussion very early tonight, and I will. I'm going to start it now. So let me go to your comments, and we'll start with those comments. And you can make a lot more comments, and we'll get to some really good stuff here. I guess the last one I read out was High Firestoners from Steve Wolfbrand. Carmen Muniz calls attention to an interesting article on Facebook that he links to from Consortium News. I'm sure it is interesting. And Carmen says, Shahed wasn't responding to our comments, was he? Nor was anyone else on there. A lot of people don't respond to comments. They just do their thing, and then they go on to the next thing to do. Steve says, I just watched Spaceballs. It's free on YouTube. I highly recommend it. May the Schwartz be with you. Yes, I remember that. That was a riot. Spaceballs is really... It's really a great satire, or send-up, or whatever you want to call it. Kay says, no, they weren't. And Carmen says, I want to watch a good old-school Western. Do you think YouTube has any? Just search for Stagecoach. See if Stagecoach is on there. That's a really old-school Western. Deborah says, here, I was finishing Lee Camp's live stream. Yeah, Lee Camp is funnier than I am. He's funnier than I am. I don't specialize in being funny, though sometimes I try. Steve says, Trump's in my thoughts and prayers. Get worse. Carmen Muniz says, Dr. Joe and Narcissus always think they're invincible. But COVID is here to learn you. Betcha that false mask is off now. There ain't no gold-plated toilets in ICU. Certainly not at the Bethesda Medical Center. Carmen Muniz says, how was it? Carmen says, here in Florida, we always hope the hurricanes destroy Mar-a-Lago. Carmen, and Steve says, Carmen, yeah, I just watched the good John Wayne one. The Undefeated, I believe it's called. I'll look for it. It's really good. How old is that one? That doesn't sound like it's that old. I think Stagecoach is like 1939 or something. 1938. That's an old one. Carmen says, Hope Hicks is pissed that she's being fingered for the outbreak. I think that some of the later commentary is no longer fingering her. They just have noticed now that she was just the first one who was tested. Steve Wolfman said, Tombstone is the best, but you got to pay for it. Is Tombstone the one with Kevin Costner? Steve says, I don't know if that's old school. Steve says, Chris Christie is hospitalized. Yes, I know. He checked himself to the hospital. Carmen says, joke, did Hicks and Donnie lock lips? COVID approves. I don't know. I've always gotten the impression that Hope Hicks was just someone who was very efficient that he relied on. I'm not sure that Donald can really do any hanky-panky anymore. Carmen says, Steve Wolfbrand, I think I have a couple bucks free credit. Steve says, hope and change has finally come true. Not what we expected, though. Kay says, if you like horror shows, check out the old miniseries of Stephen King's The Stand. My favorite book in the miniseries as well. Has relevance to 2022. What is the relevance to 2020? Steve Wolfbrand said, I just rewatched it. Carmen says, it's bradykinin storm now. They found that it's vascular attacking. Oh, you mean the cytokine storm attacks the vascular system? And Steve says, also free on YouTube. Kay says, it's great, Steve. Carmen says, no, hate horror. I don't like horror much either, and neither does Bonnie. We like science fiction, but we don't like horror. We like science fiction and fantasy, but not horror. Kay says, yes, I've seen it on YouTube. Steve says, come over, we'll watch a Western and chill. Carmen says, no Democratic senators infected. Well, of course, they weren't invited to the caucus luncheons. Kay says, I've seen those too many times, Steve. Steve says, yeah, bring Avram. Carmen says, I like the bridge background the most so far. I kind of like the bridge background too, but you know what? I still like my books in the background. I think my books are more authentic. I'll occasionally bring the books back. It doesn't take much. It just takes the flick of a wrist. Kay says, sorry, we'd have to walk, and I'm too old for that long walk. Steve says, Kay, have you read the Dark Tower series by Stephen King? Carmen says, Steve Wolfbrand, yep. Avril watches horror day and night. Kay says, yes, I have. Read most of them back when they were new books. Carmen Nuna says, where is everybody again? Steve says, the best ever. Carmen says, RBG is pulling some serious strings in the great beyond. It's interesting to contemplate that. Carmen says, will they try to caucus via Zoom? They can caucus via Zoom. They can even hold hearings via Zoom. But when they got to vote on something in the Senate, then they have to have a quorum. Kay says, they filmed Firestarter close to where I used to live in southeast North Carolina, an old plantation there. And I met King down there once too. Steve said, I shared out. Thank you, Steve. Carmen says, same. And Steve says, Barrett might have the COVID. I understood that Barrett already tested, negative. Isn't that right? Kay says, GOP are killing each other off with COVID. Laugh out loud. There are a lot of GOP people sick high up in the Republican Party. Those were some of the people Trump invited to his little feat out on the White House lawn. Steve says, Herman Cain is calling Trump. It's sort of like a Christmas carol, right? Herman Cain is calling Trump. Carmen says, read she had it over the summer, but you can get it over again. If she had it over the summer, she's probably immune. Carmen says, please, COVID, go get McConnell. He says, does it infect turtles? I have no idea. Does it infect frogs? I guess so, right? It infected Trump. Carmen says, I'm Gucci with things not going well for Trump or thin-skinned. Carmen says, Steve Wolfbrand, I think so. It's being found in water. Carmen Muniz says, only 4 of us here tonight. I don't see the number thingy. Well, there's 9 now. And there was over 10 a while ago. Carmen says, getting some applesauce nerves. We may start getting more when it gets to be, it is 10 o'clock. So Steve says, question mark. Steve says they still make that shit. Kay says, I wonder who the Dems are that voted against it. I haven't had a chance to look it up yet. Steve says, democracy, shemocracy. Steve, we really have to choose democracy. We really do. That doesn't mean choosing Biden, but it means choosing against Donald Trump, however we can manage to do it. Because he's going to put in full-blown fascism. Carmen says, bad time to march in these cooler months. With COVID for me, I have comorbidities. I have comorbidities too. And I'm old. Steve says, where are the Vegas odds on Trump survival? What are the Vegas odds of Trump survival? Kay says, I marched in the 60s and junk knees won't let me march now again. Hope the younger ones will, though. Evelina says, but will the police cooperate? Probably not. There's going to be a lot of violence from the police in various cities. There are going to be a lot of people hurt. But if people keep at it, if they keep on getting out into the streets, if they keep coming, then I think eventually some of the police will begin to turn, or the military is going to intervene. I know the military said that they would not take sides in this, but this isn't a question of taking sides. It's a question of who violates the Constitution. If Trump is violating the Constitution, they have an oath to uphold. Carmen says, now chickens know how to co-op. Carmen says, I'm hoping COVID is Antifa and we won't have to coup. Steve says, this is not an election, this is a clusterfuck. Well, it may turn out to be an election. It may turn out to be an overwhelming victory and a decision that's very, very clear. Evelina says, chickens don't count, and Steve says, chicken lives matter. Evelina says, Carmen says to Evelina, they should. Chicken soup kills viruses. Laugh out loud. Evelina says, don't count on chickens and don't count them before they hatch. Steve says, chicken soup cures everything, though. Well, that's good. We've been eating a lot of chicken soup lately. Chicken broth. And Carmen says, Steve Wolfbrandt, you bet your sweet hippie, Grandma used to say. You bet your sweet hippie. I thought the term was you bet your sweet bippy. Did you ever hear that one? I always wondered what a bippy was. Carmen said, I was referring to another kind of chicken. Steve says, I'm your sweet hippie. Evelyn says, unless you want to make chicken soup with them chickens. Carmen says, you bet your sweet bippy, Grandma used to say. Ah, yeah. So Carmen heard of that one, too. Is Bonnie home? Yeah, she's home. She's watching. Kay says, waiting on my ballot. They start to mail them here October 5th. Carmen says, Evelina Ponte, who? Politicians? Specifically Democrats. Steve Wolfbrandt says, my grandma used to say, keep the critters away from the cement pond. Carmen says, Steve Wolfbrandt, that was an autocorrect. Evelina says, I'll bet you make great chicken soup, Carmen. Carmen says, Evelina Ponte, I used to. don't eat much meat anymore. And Carmen says, no, Lee Camp isn't funnier than you, Doc. Oh, yeah, Lee Camp is a riot. Kay says, I like Lee, but I wish he wasn't so loud. Laugh out loud. Me too. I wonder about that. He's really loud. Kay says, pandemic, but that one was man-made here in the stand. Carmen says, no, the Brady kind storm. Kay says, the stand is kind of sci-fi too. Yeah, it is, I know. But I don't think it's very good sci-fi. I'm not impressed with Stephen King as a sci-fi writer. Carmen says, I love sci-fi and Highlander types movies the best. Yeah, I like the Highlander films. They were fun, and I liked the Highlander series. Of all the science fiction tales, though, the ones I like the best are Asimov's. I'm a big Asimov fan. And Carmen says, is Bonnie home? Yeah, Bonnie is home. She has been watching. And Carmen says, no, COVID antibodies don't last. I think they do. And Kay says, immunity only lasts a few weeks with COVID. John Campbell doesn't have that opinion. Steve Wolfbrand says, I tend to go with John Campbell's opinions. I think he's been following the research on this very carefully. Steve says, I haven't stopped laughing for 24 hours. People in the streets seem very happy for a change. Carmen says, I've been sleeping so much better, hoping the orange fascist may be gone. And Kay says, saw a protest from LA today via Status Quo. Was it a fun protest? Was Steve Wolfbrand there? What's a cement pond? A swimming pool. So when DT dies, will Howie possibly be president? I don't think so. I think it's okay. If Trump should suddenly kick off, it'll probably just be a landslide for Biden. Okay, but a lot of people are rooting for Trump to get better because they want to beat him fair and square. And Carmen says, hi, Bonnie. Steve says, get Bonnie on your show like Jimmy does. I'll be happy to get Bonnie on the show, but Bonnie's a little bit shy. And she doesn't want to come on the show. Yeah, you can come in here, honey. And Carmen asks, oh, is Bonnie on door? And Steve says, no, Steph Zamorano. Steph Zamorano is Jimmy's wife and also a professional comic. And Kay says, it was against the police, I think. Carmen says, as Dr. Campbell mentioned, Citolini in ICU for COVID. He mentioned him initially in yesterday's program. I haven't had a chance to watch today's program yet. So I haven't really caught up to his mentions of what's happening with Citolini.
Hi.
And how he looks at it. Bonnie says hi. She's here now.
You better move that.
I better move that. She says, I better move my glass of wine. So I'll move it over to this side. It's all right. Steve said, aliens are next. Carmen says, Steve Wolfbrand. I wonder if Dr. Joe knows that. Steve says, Steph is beautiful. Bonnie is too.
Thank you.
Bonnie is. She certainly is.
Thank you.
We've been together a long time, and she gets more beautiful every year. Kay says, hi, Bonnie.
Hi. Hi.
Carmen says, nice to see you and hear your voice, Bonnie.
Oh, that's nice.
Well, you haven't seen Bonnie yet. Would you like to move over this way so you can be seen? Wait, I'll pull this over here, and we'll take off all this stuff that I have on this chair. And then you can come over here. I can move
Okay.
over.
Nice.
And you can ease yourself into the picture. Oh, there's Bonnie. Yeah, let me see if I can get us both in
Just
the
turn
picture.
this a little.
No, that's not the way to do it. This maybe. Okay, let's see.
Okay,
Get a little
look.
closer. Oh,
There it is.
okay. How's that? We're both in the picture. I can probably get us in the picture a little better if I do this. There we are.
Hey, that's great. Can't see my wrinkles.
Okay, we're both in it now. There we go.
Hi, everyone.
And that does even better. Hello, hello. Carmen says, the sound is great. No hookups needed. And Carmen says, we love Bonnie's voice. Carmen says, nice to hear you and hear your voice, Bonnie.
Thank you.
Nice to see you and hear your voice.
Thank you.
Steve says, we love Bonnie's voice. Carmen says, Devora is stunning as well.
Oh, thank you. She's beautiful.
Yes, we know she is.
My son is very good looking. He has an unbelievable smile. If we can ever get him here.
Yeah, if we can ever get him on. He lives only 10 minutes away from here.
Yeah.
However, Devora is in L.A. now. She moved to L.A. in 2000, at the end of 2016. And Steve says, lucky man, Doc, she's a cougar. Evelyn says, hi there, Ms. Bonnie.
Hi. I love their name. Evelina.
Ah, yes, Evelina is a beautiful name. I think, okay, Evelina is from Argentina. Carmen says, the fabulous too. Steve says, lucky man, Doc, she's a cougar. Kay says, I love you two. You have the relationship I always wish for. Well, I don't know about that, but we have the relationship we always wish for.
Yeah.
And we still have it. Carmen says, great to see the face behind the voice. Carmen says, you both are very handsome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Catherine Tokarska says, COVID time in Taramtam. And Carmen says, no, she's more of a puma. And And Steve says, beautiful family. Devorah is a fave. She doesn't fuck around.
She works in accessibility, and she does acting.
Yeah. The field of accessibility, what that's about, is making websites accessible for handicapped people. So that's what it's about.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see if I can take the books away again. As Carmen says, the books are back. Let's see what happens if I put up the bridge background once again. If we're both in.
Ah, you lost me.
There's something with that background that prevents us both from getting in. I don't know what it is.
I don't know what it is.
I think
either.
it must be because I tried to shift the focus, but it didn't work that well. Let's try another background and see.
Oh, that's pretty.
Yeah, that doesn't
I like
work.
that. What
any
about that
better.
one?
No, I guess the only
No.
one that really works for both of us well is this one. That
Yeah.
one works well. So, okay, so here we are. Carmen Minna says Devorah looks like a Roman goddess.
Oh my goodness.
Well, I'll thank you on her behalf
Yeah.
because I don't think she's here tonight.
She's not.
I don't think she's watching tonight. And Carmen says, I didn't know you had all these. Well, I can put in more. I can put on all kinds, okay, of backgrounds. Steve says, Devorah is a force to be reckoned with. She is on a mission, as am I. The apple didn't fall far. Yeah, when Devorah goes on a mission, she's really tough to turn aside.
She's very focused.
She gets very focused and
Yeah.
very serious. And people don't mess with her. Steve says, what's a puma? Okay, I think a puma is an older cougar. I assume that's true. It's also a great cat. It's one of the large cat family. I think a puma is a mountain lion. Carmen says, I like your haircut, Bonnie,
Thank you.
and your eyebrows and your whiskers. Whiskers?
Yeah, whiskers.
Yeah, because you're a puma, so you have whiskers.
Uh-oh.
Okay, friends, we are here to take any other kidding you may have. And also, any questions? Puma is very refined. Oh, cool. Very cool. Carmen says, cheers. Thank you. Steve says,
Thank you.
Bonnie is stunningly beautiful. Doc is lucky. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
I certainly am lucky.
Me too.
As long as Bonnie thinks that she's lucky, I'm happy. I try always to make her think that she's lucky. Evelyn says, bunch of kitties on this side. Kidders, I mean. Yeah, I know. That's all right. And that's actually one of our secrets. See, the first time that I really got along with a kidder was when I met Bonnie.
He gets it every day.
He'll kid the hell out of me. Which is very good because I'm a very serious person. She brings the levity to the party. Carmen says, thank you both for having us tonight in these turbulent times. Are you kidding me? These are turbulent times. But you bring us to the party. Kay says, thank you all for a great discussion tonight. I just love these. Me too. So Puma is an educated cougar. Nice to know.
Oh.
Steve says, a wonderful family fighting for justice. Only thing I wish is that we were maybe 10, 15 years younger so we could fight for justice harder. Carmen says, but Bonnie does remind me of Jamie Lee Curtis. I kid you not. I think it's because she has that kind of haircut. Okay, at this point. She hasn't always had short hair.
No, used to be long.
Yes, it used to be long, and she looked great in long hair.
Yeah, and very thick. It was very thick.
Yes, it was very thick. Steve says, Alien? Carmen says, Steve Wolfbrand, Alien what? Evelina says, yeah, you're right. Oh, about you're being reminded of Jamie Lee Curtis.
Oh, I know who she is.
Yeah, Jamie Lee Curtis was the daughter of Tony Curtis and Janet Leigh.
Uh-huh.
Alien what? Evelina says, yeah, the movie. Alien the movie? Jamie Lee Curtis wasn't in Alien the movie. Carmen says, thick hair, lots of work. Yeah, it used to be lots of work. Bonnie had beautiful thick hair.
We're not asking anything.
And when we met back in the 1960s, she used to dress like Jackie Kennedy. No, Sigourney Weaver, yes. Sigourney. Whose real name is Susan. She changed it to Sigourney because she thought that sounded better for the stage. Steve says, sorry, you're right. Yeah. Yeah, she was also in, what was the name of that film, you know? Where the music was da 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 da.
You really want him to sing?
Sorry, I can't spell Sigourney. It's Sigourney. Sigourney.
Sigourney. No.
And Steve says, tell us your romantic history. I can't really do that. It would take too long.
No, it's not hard at all. I ask you to marry me. Remember?
Yes, I do. Kay says, I need a hair trim. Laugh out loud. Scott and I used to trim each other's hair, and I haven't had it trimmed since he died. Oh, boy. Carmen said, I'm letting my hair grow long. I usually let my hair grow long, and I need a haircut then, and Bonnie cuts it for me.
And I get my hair cut by a woman that comes to the apartment and cuts it. She charges $15.
Yes, except she doesn't come to the apartment anymore
No.
because
They don't allow it here.
Right.
Do they?
we have to be done outside. So we go out back of the apartment building, and they sit out there, and they both are masked, and she cuts Bonnie's hair. And Carmen says, but it's hot as Hades. And Steve says she's a hermaphrodite. Who's a hermaphrodite?
Who is?
Sigourney Weaver?
Is she really?
I don't know. Steve, you always come out with something out of left field. Bipolar? The film I'm thinking of is with Harrison Ford and I'm trying to think of the actress. And Steve said, Jamie Lee, nothing wrong with that. Jamie Lee was a hermaphrodite? I don't think so.
I didn't hear that. Where did
Jamie
you hear
Lee
that?
Curtis? I never heard that. But of course, I don't have any inside information of that kind. So, any other things to ask? Like Letitia in the Addams Family. Oh, is she a hermaphrodite?
We will ask Laura if she wants to come on, but it's really up to her.
Yes. Carmen says, well, hopefully we'll know something concrete about Adolf soon. Well, we'll probably know increasing concrete things which will be leaked, but I'll be surprised if we know anything definite. I mean, this might go on for some time into next week without anything being settled. We may not know after that whether he has a full recovery or whether there are lingering things. Kay says, my roommate was watching the Back to the Future movie, laugh out loud. Those are funny.
Yeah.
Those movies were funny. Evelina says, yeah, Letitia has long hair too. I remember Letitia now. Evelina says, like Carmen. It's Steve, Dr. Joe. He has a secret fantasy about hermaphrodites. Freudian through and through.
Come on.
Okay. Steve says, nah. I never thought. That's what I thought, Steve. Nah. Okay, any questions? Any comments? Are there any burning issues? Evelina, upon it's only shoulder length right now. Teal color. Huh. Wow. teal.
That's a pretty color.
Yeah, that's a pretty color. Okay, I think our daughter,
Granddaughter.
our granddaughter has,
Had blue hair, but it's purple now.
yeah, it's purplish blue. Evelina says, Carmen Muniz sounds pretty Carmen. Okay, your comments have slowed down. So I think we're going to say good night for tonight.
Good night, everyone.
And I'll see you with some short takes. Hopefully I can finish some that I can get up by Monday night. And my next in-depth show will be on Tuesday at 9. And Carmen says, so Mark Meadows said next 48 hours are decisive for DT after the doctor said he was fine. I think that's really consistent because what the doctor said is that he's doing well right now and he's fine, but they really can't tell about the cytokine storm. It's too early to say anything about that. And I think when Mark Meadows said the next 48 hours are decisive, I think that's when they're expecting the cytokine storm to show up if it does. I think they hope they have, nipped it in the bud with the remdesivir and the antibody cocktail combination, but they don't know. So they have to wait and see. And I don't know what they've been doing with vitamin E. They haven't actually mentioned anything with respect to vitamin E. I'll bet Trump wasn't taking that. Steve says good night.
Good
Kay
night,
says, I do nothing to Mark. Wash once a week with Pantene and that's all. No blow dryers or anything. Dolores says good night all.
Good night.
Good night, Dolores. Thank you for sharing. And Carmen Muniz says, I just can't type fast enough. Kay says, good night all. Love talking to you all. I miss you when Doc has nights off. Love to you all. We miss you too, Kay.
Love you.
Take it easy. And I'll see you soon.